Hey everybody, I'm going to talk about a book called Monkey King, um, which is a foundational and crucial text to Chinese literature, like extremely important text to Chinese literature in the same way that I would think of anyway, the Odyssey or the Iliad being like foundational texts. And it's similarly, obviously different, but similarly sort of like epic-y style. Anyway, I don't actually have the book with me to hold up because I added it to my classroom library, which, by the way, for teachers, a classroom library is like a secret way for you to justify continuing to get more books because they're for your students, right? Like the kids can take them, they can lend them out, they can read them in class, they can take them home with them if they really like them. A lot of times I give them to the kids, but it's also a secret extension of my library in a way for me to walk into my classroom and look at the books and be like, oh my gosh, look at all these books. Um, so that's just an aside. But anyway, so Monkey King. Um, the story is it's sort of split into three parts. The first part is about this monkey who wants to be immortal and basically tricks um, tricks a bunch of the immortals to teach him the ways of immortality, and he becomes super powerful. But he's kind of a horrible and terrible person. I guess he's not a person; he's a monkey, but he's like a horrible character. I really hated him actually. I don't think you're supposed to like him. He's kind of like the trickster trope. So he like cons the gods a bunch of times, which is kind of cool because like the gods are rich and seemingly like. I mean, obviously they do some cool things, but also they seem very self-important. Like they just have like rich people parties all day, kind of. So it's kind of funny when Monkey messes things up in heaven and with the different gods, but he's also just pretty insufferable. So anyway, he gets punished. He gets turned to stone for like a zillion years. And then the second part of the book follows this guy, Tripitaka, who actually seemingly was a real person who made this very long journey to get the scriptures. And so the second part is like his origin story, and then he ends up meeting Monkey. And then the last part of the book is their journey to get the scriptures and then come back. And they team up with this dragon and then this, I don't even know how to explain it. This other character called Pigsy. So I think the dragon's name's Sandy, and then there's another character named Pigsy, which is like a cursed person who's made to look kind of like a pig. And anyway, they team up, they get the scriptures, they come back, all is one. So it's an epic. It's like them going through this journey. But I will say that if it was not for the audiobook of this, I never would have finished it. I was supposed to read this in undergrad years ago. And I was supposed to read, it was like a gen ed required course, humanities course. And I really wanted to read it because it seemed really important. And I want to know foundational texts to different people's literature. It seems like an important thing to know. So I was excited to read it. And I remember in undergrad, I didn't even get past the first three chapters. And it's not because it's badly written or because it's not interesting. It's because I personally have a really hard time with some of these older epics where the story's really driven by like events that happen, and that's like the plot is the book. And I actually had a really hard time with that with the Lord of the Rings. So like I love the Lord of the Rings, but I can't actually read, like physically read Lord of the Rings. I don't know what it is, but there's too much like, and this person met this person. It's like very saga-esque. And I have a hard time with that. I feel like I need to like read characters develop more, sort of. And in the audiobook of Lord of the Rings, just the attitude of the person reading it, I think gives me some of that I'm looking for in a way that I totally love. So I remember when I listened to Lord of the Rings, that totally changed the way that I understood the characters in the book, and then I really enjoyed it. So my second time around trying to read this, right, I tried to read it in undergrad, failed, gave up, and then recently started reading again, and I got about halfway through, and the same thing happened. I was just like, I can't read this. It's not holding my attention. I don't feel like I like the characters. I feel like I'm like constantly, like I would take long breaks between reading it because I would lose motivation, and then when I would come back to it, I would forget like what was happening plot wise, so then I would have to go back and reread certain parts, so it just wasn't working, and I almost just kind of quit on the book because I was like, listen, I've given this 2 shots in my life, and I don't think it's going to work for me. But then I remembered that this happened to me with Lord of the Rings. So I was like, oh, I wonder maybe there's like an audiobook. And like, of course there's an audiobook. It is one of the most famous texts in the world. So yeah, there's lots of audiobooks. I just found like a free one on YouTube, which sounds really bad, except for the one that I found was amazing. And the guy who read it, the different voices that he did, actually sort of reminded me of the Lord of the Rings one. Like his voice was amazing. He did a lot of different voices that were interesting, and it just kept the whole thing fun. And I felt like I connected with the characters in a way that I really was not before. So if you're somebody who struggles with those kind of texts, like the Iliad or the Odyssey, I would say listen to it on audio. And I wish I had listened to the whole thing on audio from the beginning, because I would have had a really different experience than I did trying to read it. So, yeah, I mean, it's a very old text. So, it's very sexist. Most of the women characters are victims that have to get rescued. There's not many women gods or enlightened people. There are a few, and the ones that there are pretty cool. But other than that, the women pretty much get abused, or like the one mom just gets forgotten for a long period of time, and like lives in poverty. So it's not nice to women. But I do think that the way that it acted towards some of the gods was kind of cool, because like they were definitely supposed to be like noble and wise, which they were, but also they were kind of terrible people that were interested in like dumb, frivolous things, like special parties, and like lots of pomp and circumstance. So it was kind of I don't know if it was meant to be read this way or not, but I sort of read it as like an everyman story, even though Monkey's obviously this immortal monkey, but it felt like an everyman story to me, because it's like you had these kind of underdog heroes who are more ordinary, and from humble beginnings, I guess, that are your main characters. And so, especially early on in the book, when you have Monkey sort of embarrassing all the people in heaven over and over again, I thought that was pretty entertaining once I started listening to it on the audio. So yeah, bottom line, I would recommend this, but I wouldn't, I personally would not read it. I would listen to it on audio. Okay.